Hello and welcome and happy May EDS Awareness Month. Today's webinar topic is EDS and HSD Awareness and Advocacy 101. My name is Jessica Adelman. I'm the Communications Manager for the Ehlers-Danlos Society, and I am your moderator and co-presenter today. As a Communications Manager, I manage the webinar series, although you usually don't see me, you usually just hear me, as well as the patient stories, newsletter, and develop many of the materials for the website and for social media. I have a degree in public health policy with a minor in biology from Austin College, and before joining the Ehlers-Danlos Society staff, I started and led the Oklahoma support group EDSOK for several years and spearheaded a variety of advocacy and awareness projects. I currently live in Baltimore, Maryland. Joining me today is Laura Bloom. Laura? I'm Shani Weber.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shani Weber, and I am the patient and community advisor for the Ehlers-Danlos Society. I manage our helpline emails. I also help moderate on our message board on Inspire. I co-lead the Maryland EDS support group. I attend conferences and speak at them, but I also go to Capitol Hill and speak with my elected representatives about issues that are important to our community. And I go to medical school classrooms and talk to medical school students about types of Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, about types of hypermobility spectrum disorders, and different ways those can affect us and how we manage them. I live in Maryland, and I'm so glad each and every one of you could join us today.
Laura, I believe you're back.
I am. Of course, typically when you have a webinar, my Wi-Fi connection is unstable, so apologies for that. Yeah, my name is Laura Bloom, and I'm the International Executive Director of the Ehlers-Danlos Society. And I think many of you follow all of our social media platforms and join in all the work that we're doing currently. And you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and catch up on all the things we're doing this May, as well as everything around the year surrounding all our advocacy and awareness.
Thanks. A quick note about how this webinar is going to work. Attendees are muted at all times. However, you can type questions into the Q&A box at any time. You can find that as a square button with a Q on it that says Q&A to type in your questions. We will not be able to see or respond to any questions until the Q&A time at the end of the presentation. Please don't send in your questions more than once. It won't increase the chance your question will be answered. It'll only make it harder for us to sift through these questions. This webinar is being recorded, and barring technical difficulties, it will be uploaded to our YouTube page within a few weeks. So, further ado, Laura, would you like to start us off?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Jess.
Right.
Okay. So, I mean, to me, awareness and advocacy happens all year round, but there's never a better time to talk about it than May Awareness Month. I think it's a time where it's really on everyone's minds more than anything. And I think it's important to remember what you are raising awareness of and all the different opportunities that there are. So something that has been very important to the Ehlers-Danlos Society since we launched in 2016 is really ensuring that our awareness is as international as possible. And I think that's quite hard when you're trying to deal with lots of different languages, lots of different cultures, but it's important to do it. And I think also to remember that every single person's healthcare system and process of getting care and management is also different. So when you are raising awareness, the things that you may be talking about may not always be relevant in everybody's countries. But I think it's important for everybody to take on the responsibility of doing that. And that's why we turn to our community so often to help us. There's nothing stronger than telling your own personal story and sharing what you have been through, what your family or friends or partner may have been through. And I think strength comes in all those individual voices coming together. And what we're trying to do at the Society is to arm you with everything that you would need to be able to do that but also understanding that that may need to be tweaked differently as to where you are in the world, what problems that they may be facing within your healthcare systems, whether that be access to medicine or care, lack of the amount of specialists that are there, but simply doing things like giving out leaflets, consistently talking about what EDS is with the correct terminology and things like that is really a great way to start. I think what's also important, what I always get questioned is kind of, how do I do this? How do I raise awareness and become an advocate? And I think for me, the most important thing is to try and remember that although the power is in your narrative and your story, that's where it begins. And to be able to do this long term, you have to remember that you represent a spectrum and lots of different patients experience, lots of different types of EDS now. And within each type, there's a vast spectrum. So you need to remember that when you are talking publicly, you're not just representing your voice, you're trying to represent all of the different types, all of the different frustrations, all of the different capabilities, struggles culturally in terms of where people are in the world, what access they have. And that's really hard to remember to do. But we hope that we're going to give you the tools to be able to think about that more. Something that we've been trying to do at the Society for a long time is really collaborate. It's absolutely in the heart of our mission. And we would encourage everyone that wants to take on advocacy and awareness to think about how you can do it together with other people, because as cheesy as it is, together you are stronger. And you can see lots of examples here how we have actually tried to collaborate with other patient organizations, other patient experts, medical experts, to really come together. We've all got very similar missions. When you're fighting to raise awareness for Ehlers-Danlos syndromes and for HSD, hypermobile spectrum disorders, it's important that we all do have one voice, because if everyone is fragmented and everyone is just worrying about what's in their silo and what's in their lane, we're not going to advance. And I think that's historically what has happened up till this point. And what we hope with the Society is that we're giving that platform, that space where people can come together and work together. And we're trying to ensure that we get the content and the medical information that you all need to then go and potentially translate into your own languages, to tweak things so that it works within your audiences, and to really speak on behalf of all of our community. And we've also done this on government levels as well. Shani has spoken in the US, I've spoken in the EU and the UK and the House of Parliament. And it's also important not just to remember that you can raise awareness with just EDS and HSD. Often the awareness opportunities we have is within rare and invisible conditions. So there's been a lot of rare disease work, especially in Europe, that has happened where we've had the opportunity to represent EDS. I think there's also quite a bit of confusion and still, I guess, differing opinions as to whether EDS is actually in fact rare. And it is rare. Currently, it is listed as a rare disease. And so that we do find ourselves in audiences where there's a lot of other rare diseases being discussed. And I think that that is an opportunity, but it's also important to remember with HSD that there's a lot of horses as well as zebras. And so you've got to kind of get a mix of raising awareness that this is rare. Other than hypermobile EDS, all of the types of EDS are most definitely rare. And then you have hypermobile EDS, which still is considered rare. But then you have HSD, which is incredibly prevalent, and we need to prove that. We need to understand it as well. So there's lots of things you're raising awareness of there, and already that makes this quite a unique situation. There are, of course, other conditions where you have different prevalence rates within the same umbrella, but that's also hard to get your head around. So thinking about raising awareness on a government level, on a larger scale, you're often having to be surrounded by other conditions that maybe not completely align to you, but actually you have a lot more in common than you actually think. When thinking about going to these places, going on a government level, thinking about speaking at events, it's always good to know that there actually is quite a bit of support out there that can help you feel like you are more of a patient expert. One thing that I don't have written down here, but is actually some amazing work, is Paradigm. And it's a public-private partnership that is co-led by the European Patients Forum and the EFPIA. And its mission is to try and provide a framework that enables structured, effective, meaningful, ethical, innovative, and sustainable patient engagement. Because we all say all the time that, you know, nothing about us without us. Having the patient voice involved in the conversation is so valid and important. but there's not really any evidence out there to show that that actually is true. So what Paradigm is trying to do is show the difference between having a patient as an equal stakeholder around the table, from bench to bedside, from the whole conversation, treated equally, really does make an impact on the quality of work that comes out. So I'm delighted to be part of Paradigm and working through that process. And I think it will benefit everyone, especially advocacy and awareness for patients involved in the long term. Something that I've spoken about my personal experience of a lot is going through the EUPATI Academy. So EUPATI is the European Patients Academy on Therapeutic Innovation. And it's a really intense program, and far more intense than I really thought. To get on it, you have to be recommended by someone, and it is actually open to people from all over the world. You tend to see more people from within Europe there, but it is actually open to anyone globally. But what it is it gives you the skills in research and development to really understand drug therapy, clinical trials, and being part of research as an equal stakeholder. And that gave me skills that I have never had before in my life. And it really armed me with a lot of information. And it's free to take part on, because they have funding to get speakers trained up and part through the academy. And the opportunities that come from that in terms of speaker opportunities, etc., are huge. So I think looking into these kinds of things is really, really beneficial. Something that is also similar to that is the Rare University, which is run by Global Genes. That's another international organizations that set out to help patient organizations supporting rare diseases. And they offer a similar structure to what EUPATI does. They're based in the US, but again, totally catered for a global audience. So you should also have a look there. And they have featured courses. And all the information is on their website. But again, a great resource to educate you and train you up so you're on that next level of becoming a patient expert. Another website and resource that's out there is the Rare Advocacy Movement. And it's led by patients. It's a patient advocacy initiative, which is kind of, again, evolving complex structure and unique dynamics of the rare disease patient advocacy landscape. And it's really trying to help train people up, provide mentorships amongst the community, and highlight people that are becoming patient experts in their field. Another great resource to check out. And something else as well is the BMJ. They are offering the opportunity for patients to take part in their initiative, which is involving patients, and the BMJ itself is committed to improving the relevance and patient-centeredness of its research. And they really look out to patients to help them make those changes. So they want people to be part of the review process. So they've set up a patient and public review. Check out their website, gives you the opportunity to be part of that peer review process, which I think is really, really important. We need to get a lot more patients involved at that level. So as you can see, lots and lots of different opportunities, so much potential. I think it does help to remember that you're representing a whole community when you go out as a patient advocate, but you are at the center of it, doing it through your narrative, and trying to get the balance of that right. I actually, as a patient advocate, rarely talk about my own patient story. I find that when I do, it's always, it's very helpful for people to understand. But on the whole, I actually speak on behalf more of what EDS is, what HSD is, what needs to be done, and representing the whole community at a time. There's very different ways and techniques and approaches to this, and there's no right and wrong. I think that's something to remember and to consider. But sometimes saving those really emotive, personally driven stories is good in certain audiences and platforms. And sometimes saving those for ones that will have the most impact and really reach people that have no understanding of the condition, versus speaking on a more generalized level about all the different types, all the different spectrum, and on an awareness on a more general level. So on our website, under Get Involved is becoming a patient advocate, and all of these things that I've spoken about today are all listed on that website. You can also contact me through our website and ask any questions you have at any time about how I do what I do, how I got into it, the kind of problems that I have overcome. Believe it or not, when I first started this nearly 10 years ago, I was so scared about public speaking. I remember the first talk I did, at a band night that we were doing when I was running EDS UK, and I nearly like carved a hole in the floor. I was pacing back and forth so much. I was really relying on my piece of paper and every word written out. And I now realize it's like when you know your stuff, you know how to present it. You know, you spend the time going through slides, really going through your presentation if you are presenting and on a public level, and really understanding and knowing what you're talking about. And that will make the nerves a little bit better, and it will enable you to not have to rely on a piece of paper and be able to just talk from the heart a little bit more. And that's also a really good tip. It's good to try and remain having eye contact with a couple of people in the audience as well, so you're not just holding a piece of paper and reading down. But you know, get out there, help us with our dazzle, help us raise awareness. We want to get to a time when you say, I have EDS or HSD, and people say, what's that? And we can't do that alone. We really, really require an army. So we're really trying to recruit into that army, give you all the help, point you to the right training that's possible, and do what we can. So now I'm going to pass on to Jess, if you're there.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Laura. If you could advance the slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to talk about EDS and HSD. The most important thing to remember when talking about EDS and HSD is to use accurate, verifiable, up-to-date information from reputable sources. The easiest way to lose someone when you're trying to raise awareness is to put out there something that's not true or that's out of date. It's so important to remain accurate because that is when you're going to lose credibility when you're not. We, the Society, of course, we collect all of the most up-to-date and accurate information on our website, so that is the best place to go to find a source. We have a variety of things and a variety of areas, so if you need a source for what you're going to be presenting on, come see us. And if we don't have it up there, if you can't find it, send us a message and we'll see if we can help. It's okay if you don't know everything when you're talking about it, because EDS is so incredibly vast and complex, and none of us know everything about it. But a lot of us know a little bit about one thing. So talk about the things that you're comfortable talking about. You don't have to pretend that you know everything. And if someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, don't make something up, please. Just redirect them to our website or to someone you know who might know the answer. That is a lot better as far as keeping it accurate. And also when you share your story, because you know your own story, you know how to be accurate when you're talking about yourself. And that is something that you're never going to be wrong about when you're sharing your own story. So if you talk about, say, dislocations, and you talk about how EDS causes dislocations, it might seem a little impersonal to people to say, oh, well, yes, a lot of people with EDS experience a lot of dislocations. But if you followed up with, my shoulder dislocates 5 times an hour. Wow, that is a personal detail that has a big impact and people can contextualize it. So it's good to pepper the information with your own story and your own experiences. Next slide, please. In order to remain accurate, it's important to get the terminology correct and up to date. EDS is not one disorder. As Laura mentioned, EDS and HSD, we're representing a spectrum. And when someone goes out and they raise awareness and they say, I have EDS, it's important to, when you're telling your story, talk about the types that you have. Because if you're telling your story and you have hypermobile type, then you're going to be telling a different story with different experiences than someone who has vascular type or classical type. So when you're going out in the community and you're talking about EDS, always talk about the type that you have when you're telling your story, so that you can be sure that you are not representing, you're not saying that your symptoms represent everyone. We don't consider EDS to be one disorder. We consider EDS to be a collection of disorders. The Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, we put an S on the end of it now to clarify that it is more than one thing. The hypermobility spectrum disorders. When we're talking about types, we use the descriptive names. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. When you're typing it, one thing to know about when you're talking about EDS or any condition is the rule of thumb for capitalization is if it's someone's name, if it's a part of the name of the condition that is named after a person, you capitalize it. Any other words is lowercase. So hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, Ehlers and Danlos are capitalized because those are named after people, but hypermobile and syndrome are descriptive words, so you don't need to capitalize those things. So that's why HEDS is lowercase h and then capital EDS, because of hypermobile is the descriptive term for EDS as a whole. We no longer say EDS type 3 or EDS 3. That is not something that is used anymore officially. It is something that people still use. That was actually out of date as of 1999 with the previous criteria before the updated 2017 criteria. And if someone goes and searches for EDS type 3, they're going to get a lot of inaccurate and out-of-date information because none of the medical literature has called it that since 1997. So although a lot of people still use type 3, even some doctors still use it because that's what they were taught because they went to medical school before 1997. But it's important that we try to advance that and we try to all say the same thing and talk about the same thing. So it avoids confusion and it makes sure that we're all accurate. And it's also incorrect to just say that I have Ehlers-Danlos because I don't have all of them. I have my own type. Next slide, please. So when you go out to talk about EDS, one of the hardest things to answer, and I'm sure all of you have experienced this situation, someone comes to you and says, what is EDS? And they have like 30 seconds and you have to explain all of it at once, and there's just too much to include in that. It is so incredibly hard to explain what EDS is in a very short amount of time. And when you start to talk about it, sometimes you'll find yourself rambling and saying, oh, well, there's also this, and you can't forget about this, and this, and this, and this. That's why it's so important to, before you start talking about EDS, before you go out to raise awareness, you practice your elevator speech. And an elevator speech is, it's called that because it's basically the length of an elevator ride. How do you explain what EDS or HSD is in 30 seconds or less? So I have a few examples here. The first one is a factual example. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and hypermobility spectrum disorders are groups of connective tissue disorders that may be inherited and can produce a range of complex across multiple systems of the body. That is from Mark Martino on staff, who wrote that one, which is a really good overview of a lot of different things. And that's great because it puts a lot of information into a short amount of time. Next slide, I have a few more examples. Another factual example, EDS is a group of 14 inherited connective tissue disorders. The hallmark symptoms of EDS usually present across all types are hypermobile joints, skin hyperextensibility, and tissue fragility. Those three things have been identified as things that are seen a lot in lots of different types, and so those are kind of general things that are said a lot. Another way to do your elevator speech in a different way is to use an analogy. One that's used a lot is EDS and HSD impact the connective tissues that are present throughout the body that helps to hold everything together. A body with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or hypermobility spectrum disorders is like a house built with building materials. And analogies are good because they make people think about what that would be like to be a house built out of faulty building materials. My foundation's crumbling all the time and the plumbing is screwing up. And of course, that's going to make everything go haywire if it's built with faulty materials. And that is something that can help people figure out what it would be like. Also, your elevator speech, when you talk about EDS, you don't have to say everything. You don't have to even say most of it. You just have to raise a little bit of awareness, put a little seed in their mind so that they know something about EDS, because if they know one thing about EDS, that's better than if they know nothing. So don't feel like when you're starting to develop how you're going to talk about EDS that you have to cover everything. just cover what you can. I've given these as examples. You're certainly welcome to use them or to develop your own as long as they're accurate. But you want to pick an elevator speech that is something you're comfortable with, something that you are comfortable elaborating on. You know how to explain all the different parts of it. If people say, well, what does that mean? What is tissue fragility? So choose an elevator speech that you're comfortable with, work to develop it, and be ready. So the next time someone asks, what is EDS and HSD, you'll have an answer for them. Next slide, please. So a good place to start when you're raising awareness is social media, because it is an easy way to reach a lot of people without doing a whole lot of work. The other reason it's a really great place to start is because you can respond without being face-to-face with someone. And that makes it a lot easier. And it's a great way to practice, because if someone asks you a question, instead of freezing in front of them, knowing how to respond, you can research, you can ask your friend, you can send us a message, you can look it up. And you can take the time to formulate your response before you type it out there. And that is a good way to practice. And over time, as you practice doing it while taking that time to figure out what you're going to say, you will find that you don't have to do that as much. And then you can become more comfortable talking about it, and it's easier to do in person. Next slide, please. So the first thing to talk about when you're making a great awareness post for social media is to know your audience. So a lot of you, when you have, have a special interest, or a job or something, and you've met a lot of people through that. And so a big portion of your social media will have something in common. You're a teacher, and a lot of your Facebook friends are also teachers. Or you're a musician, and a lot of your Facebook friends are also musicians. That creates an opportunity to think about what would be engaging for those types of people. And you tailor your post to appeal to those people. For example, as a musician, you may post something about how EDS hands, being hypermobile, can both help and hurt if you play the piano, because people with EDS who play the piano find that they can reach a lot more keys at once because their hands are so hypermobile, but their hands also fatigue easier. Their fingers dislocate. They may need ring splints or something like that. And that kind of thing is interesting to a musician who would then think about, oh, what would it be like if my hands were hypermobile and I could reach all those keys, but then they hurt all the time. So if you tailor your post to your audience and the things that your audience have in common, it's going to be more likely to be engaged upon. There's one thing that your audience all has in common, and that is they are all following with you. So your stories are great for social media because they are friends and followers of you for a reason. They want to know about you. They want to know about your life. So tell them about it. Social media is one of those places where it's okay to share your story. That's what it's for. So take advantage of that and talk about something that you know everything about yourself. Next slide, please. When you create a social media post, what you're trying to do is to stop the scroll. You only have a few seconds to capture someone's attention as they're scrolling through their feed. And to keep them from scrolling on, you've got to make them stop and look at it. So you want to be eye-catching and capture their attention from the very first second. Photos and video perform better with algorithms. So if you're posting on Facebook and you post something with a photo or a video, Facebook is going to prioritize that and put it in people's news feeds above other things. So those are always good to include in there. You want to stick to what shows your strength. If you are a great writer, then maybe it would be better to craft a post using words rather than pictures, and just put a picture in there to for the algorithm maybe. But if you're a photographer, you may want to focus on the photo. Stick to what your strengths are. And as you're trying to figure out what would be the best thing to post, think about social media posts you've seen in the past that you remember? Why do you remember them a day later, a week later, a month later? What was so engaging about it? What was so memorable about it? And you can use those kinds of things to figure out what will make a social media post memorable to someone else. Next slide, please. Focus on one thing at a time. It can be really tempting to tell your whole story at once, but you don't really need to do that. Each post can be one thing. So focus on a story, symptom, story, symptom, or challenge per post. Dig deep and really explore that one thing. And back up your experiences with credible sources. So if you're talking about something that you experienced, it's great to also include a link to an informational resource that talks about that particular thing. Next slide, please. Some do's and don'ts. Do keep it brief. People are more likely to read a post that has 1 paragraph or 2 paragraphs than something that has 12 paragraphs. So if you can make your point as quickly and as concisely as possible, people are going to be more likely to pay attention. Definitely be accurate earlier, but it is so incredibly important. It's worth mentioning a million times. Do welcome and answer questions. If someone has a follow-up question, be polite and answer it as best as you can. You don't want to alienate someone who may be asking an innocent question, even if it kind of strikes you the wrong way. They just don't know, but that's what you're here for. You're there to educate them. You're there to correct their misconceptions. So do welcome and answer questions where you can. You can let people know where they can learn more. Of course, you can direct them to us. And only share what you're comfortable sharing. If you think that you need to share something that you're just really, you'd rather keep to yourself, you don't need to do that. Just stay within your comfort level, share what you want to share. And if you don't want to talk about it, then don't talk about something else. Next slide, please. Don't be afraid to make a post not everyone will like, because that's impossible. There's no such thing as a post not everyone will like, that everyone likes. Don't be afraid to put something out there, even if you think that someone might not like it, because it's just not possible. You can appeal to the people you're going to appeal to, and if some people don't like it, then that's just their problem. Don't lose credibility by posting inaccurate or out-of-date information. Don't only post about EDS. If that's the only thing people know about you, that you have EDS, then they may stop paying attention a while. So make sure to show that you are a whole person. Make sure to show that you have interests outside of EDS, because we do. We are way more than our EDS. So that is one thing that to avoid, is to post only EDS. Don't be discourteous or rude. Don't turn away someone who really wants to know because they've been misinformed before. You have an opportunity to educate them if they have been misinformed before. And don't feel like you need to reinvent the wheel. If you think that you need to create all of your own content to share on social media, you don't really have to. It's great to put out your own things, but we put out so many things that you can repost. If you see something you like that resonates with you, share it. It may resonate with someone else too. Put a commentary on it, on why it resonated for you. Say something like, I had an experience like this once and it was really impactful for me. And you can include your own little story with the post that resonated with you. Remember, you never know who's paying attention. I did an awareness activity on social media for May Awareness Month a few years ago. And I had someone contact me who I went to high school with, who we weren't great friends in high school and we hadn't talked since high school. This was about 10 or 12 years after high school. I had no idea she was paying attention to my posts. She'd never interacted with my posts. She'd never liked them. I had no idea that she was reading, but she told me that she was a labor and delivery nurse, and a patient came in the other day who had EDS. And she was able to tell that patient that she knew what that was. She knew what that meant. She knew what that meant for her body. And she knew what that meant for her pregnancy and for her delivery. And that made a huge impact on that woman and an incredibly stressful moment of her life. So that is something that came out of just me posting on Facebook, that this person was able to get better medical care in a way that could be a situation that could have gone incredibly wrong, because labor and delivery is scary. But she had a nurse with her who knew what EDS was because she saw a Facebook post. So that is something that can make a huge impact. Awareness has a ripple effect. My short post helped someone get better medical care. And that labor and delivery nurse now knows how to look out for other patients who have EDS because of that. A single post can make a huge difference. So don't ever think that you are not doing a big thing because you're only posting on social media. And just remember that if you make all of your posts this May, and if you raise all this awareness, and the only thing that happens is you reach one person, and that one person helps someone else through the delivery of their child, that's huge. So make it your goal to reach one person this May for EDS Awareness Month, and see how big of an impact that can have. Next slide, please. Join us. Go to our website and our social media and click on the Awareness Month banner, or you can go to 2019 Awareness Month. We have daily challenges of social media posts. We have all kinds of other things. And those are a great way to start out posting about EDS awareness, because we've got all the materials right there. We've got a lot of ideas for you to post. And you can just piggyback on our ideas and run with it and see if you can raise some awareness on social media this May. Thank you. I will turn it over to Shani now.
Next slide. Thank you. So we've been talking about advocacy, but does everyone really know what we mean by that? Advocacy, or being an advocate, is about an ongoing process to build partnerships so that others will act for or with you. These partnerships, as Laura mentioned, may be with other organizations that have similar missions and goals. Partnerships may be with the staff members in your elected officials' offices, building those partnerships so that you can be working on issues important to our community. Partnerships may be with doctors in your community, which can lead to opportunities to speak to groups of doctors, or even meet with individual doctors one-on-one to explain what types of Ehlers-Danlos syndromes and hypermobility spectrum disorders are. Even within your own family, advocacy is about building those partnerships, those connections, in order to create a relationship where your audience members are willing to learn or do what it is that you're asking. Next slide, please. Advocacy can literally happen anywhere you are on any day of the week. If you're at doctor appointments, you are being an advocate, a self-advocate, when you're trying to help your doctors or other medical practitioners learn about the type of Ehlers-Danlos syndromes or hypermobility spectrums disorders that you have, as well as if they will allow you to meet with other doctors in their practice. As I said, you could advocate with family members, either your immediate family or at family functions. You can advocate at schools with your child's teachers, or even just going to different schools in your community to speak about types of EDS and HSD. Community meetings are great opportunities where you can do advocate work and teach others about these conditions. Anything from Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts to a local coffee group to a local town council. Also with it, speaking of town council, government, you can advocate everywhere from your local elected officials all the way up to your national officials. You can also advocate in different government departments, maybe the health department, maybe a social services department, and do anything from sharing brochures to talking with them over lunch about our conditions and what issues are important to our community to help everybody live a better life. But you can also advocate in daily life. When you're at the grocery store, you can talk to the person behind you while you're waiting your turn to pay about types of EDS and HSD. If you have a parking permit for disabled spots and somebody gives you that look, you can thank them for giving you the opportunity to teach them about types of EDS and HSD. Anywhere you are in your day really is an opportunity to advocate for things that can help you and everybody living with these conditions. Next slide, please. To be a great advocate, you want to make a goal, have reasonable expectations, and know that it's about growing those partnerships. It's not about battles and fighting. It's about building relationships with others. Next slide, please. So let's start with making your goal. You want to appeal to their head. What is it that you want them to know? You want to appeal to their heart. What is it that you want them to feel? And you want to appeal to their hands. What is it you want them to do? Next slide, please. We're going to talk about that. If you're talking to doctors or other medical professionals, a lot of times they really like facts and information. You're going to appeal more to their head. This is when you're wanting to share brochures or medical journal articles, explaining different types of EDS and HSD, as well as different aspects or common comorbid conditions. Provide information from reputable sources that can be national and international organizations like the Ehlers-Danlos Society, as well as resources like PubMed, where you can find abstracts, and also Google Scholar, where you can find medical journal articles and abstracts on any topic to share with the medical professionals. When you're talking with the general public, or if you are talking with reporters, a lot of times it's more effective to appeal to their heart, to help them feel something. You still want to give facts and information, but you want to share your story and what it feels like to live with a type of EDS or HSD. And everyone you talk to, you want to make sure they know what you want them to do. Everyone you talk to, you're going to appeal a little bit to their head, facts and information, a little bit to their hearts, something that really makes them feel something. And with every person, what it is you want them to do. But with different audiences, you're going to do more of one than the other. A little bit more head, a little bit more heart, depending who you're talking with. Next slide, please. It can be hard, but we need to have reasonable expectations. we know what it's like to live with our type of EDS or HSD, but we don't even know what it's like for another person living with the same or a different type of EDS or HSD. And those that don't have these conditions at all really don't know exactly what it's like. We can't know what it's like to not live with these conditions. This is the only way of living we know, right? By having reasonable expectations, you can know that your audience is not going to know everything that you know about these conditions and about what it's like to live with them. And that's okay. That's okay. If you've created a goal, address the goal versus having a goal that they're going to know as much as you do and know exactly how it feels to be you. Next slide, please. But reasonable expectations also includes knowing it can take a really long time to change laws or to change hearts and minds. So be patient, but be persistent. Doing advocacy work is not going to magically make things different overnight. It takes consistently building relationships, consistently showing up to opportunities to really change the hearts and minds, the laws, the policies that can really make our lives easier with greater awareness and greater research and greater understanding from those that live in our communities. It is important to partner also with other organizations, like Laura said. But that also means you're with a lot of different advocates who all want to have their voices heard too. So work on making your message concise. That means not too long, but powerful. Powerful information, a powerful story. Also know not everybody's going to agree with you, and that is okay. Don't take it personally. Just work on creating a partnership or a relationship with somebody else. But you can slowly work with that person who doesn't agree with you, and maybe you can come to some agreement at some point. Next slide, please. So building those partnerships, you can do that by using words like we and us. You don't want to be talking about us and them, the others. This is about all of us. This is how we want to work together. It's always easier to build a relationship when you find ways to laugh together and things that you have in common. So when building these partnerships, whether it's somebody at a family event, whether it's at a community meeting, or whether it's with staff people in your elected officials' office, you can find things that you have in common, ways to connect with people. By building that connection, you can build the partnership, which helps you then raise the awareness that you're trying to raise and meet the goals that you have set. But keep your explanations simple and matter of fact. You really don't need to over-explain things. People can only listen for so long. Next slide, please. Believe in yourself and the importance of your message. Nobody can tell your story like you. But you also want to educate yourself about your condition, using the right terminology and using the most up-to-date facts. Our website at www.Ehlers-Danlos.com has a lot of information that can help you learn about your conditions, as well as brochures, posters, and videos that you can share with those that you're raising awareness with. Be sure to practice what you're going to say. It'll help you not be nervous, but it'll also help you make the most concise presentation you can. Next slide, please. Make eye contact with who you're speaking with. Be courteous and concise, of course. And basically, you all know this. You treat others how you wish to be treated, right? If you're building those partnerships, it's really not fighting with them, battling them. It's really about treating them how you want to be treated and making those connections. Next slide, please. Your story is unique to you. Make sure you're backing it up with facts to make the points that you need, but think about what are the most effective parts of your story. What would connect with your audience the best? When you don't know something, it's better to say, I don't know, or I don't know, but I'll find the answer out for you, than to give incorrect information. And of course, practicing makes perfect, but you don't have to be perfect. Next slide, please. We're going to go, these slides are going to be available, so I'm not going to go through each one, but there are so many places that you can advocate at. Here are 6 examples. Next slide, please. And here's everything from your government to medical professionals to local media, both TV, newspaper, magazines, or online sources like the Mighty. Next slide, please. Understand that you are the perfect person to raise awareness for types of EDS and HSD and issues that are important to our community. You live in a place where people do not know what types of EDS and HSD are or what issues are affecting us, what changes could be made that could really help our community. So you are in the perfect spot, and you are the perfect person to raise awareness. You may have an interest more in government, more in medical institutions, more in schools and other educational forums, or more in community centers. So think about what area really interests you for how you could make a difference. We really hope that this webinar has helped you think about different ways that you can be an advocate, different tips to make you a successful advocate. But the question now is, will you? Will you be an advocate for all of us living with these types of Ehlers-Danlos syndromes and hypermobility spectrum disorders? I'd love to work with you. Thank you.
We will do a little bit of Q&A, and we are close to of our normal period, but we'll extend a little bit past it so we can get to a few more questions. So if you have any questions, please type them in and we'll get to as many as we can. The first question is, what is a good way to help my 6-year-old son explain his classical EDS to other kids around his age? Right now, he just tells them he has fragile skin because of a gene his dad gave him. But honestly, I think that is a great place to start. Do either of you have other input on that?
I do. It's important when I said to know your audience, know that your audience may be 6 years old or maybe 12 or 17. Giving an explanation that is age appropriate is key. At 6 years old, saying that my skin is fragile and it's a genetic condition from my dad's genes is a great explanation. But you also might work with your son about being a good self-advocate, being a good reporter of, is your son able to tell his teacher when he needs something, when he's having a symptom, or when he needs to go to the nurse or go to the restroom or needs water or whatever it may be. So working with your son to be a good self-advocate, to be able to report his symptoms to you, to his teachers, and to his doctors.
I think it can also be good to expand on exactly what it means to have fragile skin. That means that if you bump into me, I might get a bruise. Or if I run my arm along the edge of the cabinet, I might cut my skin. I might get a paper cut really easily. So those kinds of things be also easier for a 6-year-old to understand that it just means you get hurt a lot more and your skin gets hurt a lot more. So those kinds of examples could be another way to expand upon that as well. I think we lost Shane. Lara, do you have anything to expand on that? Oh, there she is.
No, I think you both covered that.
So one question is, what is the correct numbers for the types of syndromes? I've heard 13, 14, and 15 in the latest literature.
So the latest 2017 publication is actually 13 types. Since then, they've discovered another type, which is meaning that we know that there are 14 types, but the nosology has not been updated yet to include that. There is also a 15th type being discussed in papers. And I think it's going to go on and on and on, because as we do the HEDGE study and other genetic studies that are being done globally, and we learn more and more, genetics is much more accessible, it's going to increase. I've actually made a secret bet with Dr. Claire Francomano about how many types I think we'll be presenting on in Rome in 2021. We shall see who wins the bet out of us both. But let's just say it's a lot more than 15. But currently published is 13. We know there's 14. And I think it's just keep watching this space. I imagine that within the next year or two, there will probably be another publication updating the types. We said that we wanted to try and do that every 3 to 5 years.
So this person says that they want their doctors to be more receptive. They have found that their familiarity with EDS seems to be limited to 1 to 2 lines in a textbook, and they've been uninterested in delving deeper or looking further or learning more. Is any advice on a non-combative way to encourage them to expand their knowledge on EDS and HSD? Shani, you want to take that one?
You want to take that, Shani?
Sure, definitely. It can be challenging when the doctors that we see do not know a lot about types of EDS and HSD. They haven't been keeping up with the medical literature. What can be helpful, I have found personally, is let's say I'm going to my doctor because I have some new GI symptoms. If I find an article on PubMed or Google Scholar, or even on our website under the 2017 International Classification articles about gastrointestinal involvement in types of EDS and HSD, I can share that article with my doctor, understanding that my doctor does not have the time to read that information during the appointment, but just saying, these are my symptoms. Could we work together to manage them better? And by the way, here's an article about gastrointestinal issues in EDS in case you might want to learn more about it.
We have a couple of questions about how to find more resources on certain things. The particular ones that were brought up here are hospital protocols and PT and OT braces. And they would like to find more sources so that they can advocate more accurately. So a good place to come to is our website for specific things. And send in a question to the helpline, and they might be able to help you find more. Laura, do you have any other input on where to find good sources for those things?
I think, yeah, I think we try and make the society as much of a good signpost as possible to lead to other things. I think it's also important what works for some people doesn't work for all. So really try and do as much research as you can, you know, and that goes for all types of holistic medicine, whereby acupuncture, for example, and for other people that makes them feel horrific. Same with splinting. Some splints work well for people, for others they don't. So we try not to endorse one particular brand. It's very much you do some research, see what people are using. Forums are great places for that, to talk to others and see what's worked for them, and then trial it, work out what's right for you. I think as well, turn to the published evidence out there for splinting, and if you're talking about in terms of trying to get your doctor to give you splinting in terms of protocols. There's a mixed bag again out there, so it's pretty much universally agreed upon that splinting should only be used when there's acute pain, and not all the time, because as soon as you put that splint on, then it kind of, the muscle stops working, and then that leads to more and more problems, and it's a domino effect. So there's no standard protocol of when you should wear a brace or a splint and how long for. It's really just trying to work it out. And this is what I mean, everything is really very much individual, and based upon different people's different types, where they're on the spectrum, what kind of experiences they have, what kind of symptoms they have. And no one should ever be raising awareness and advocating for one particular way. You just have to advocate for the right way for you, so that every single patient, no matter what they're living with, has some kind of management and care that's tailored to their symptoms. And you can lean on the evidence out there for support. And all of that is on our website, so you can find that. We have a medical articles library with all the relevant publications that are out there. Some are not open access for non-medical professionals, but we've got them all there, because there may be students amongst you, or indeed some medical professionals. But if it's published and it's out there, it will ordinarily be on our page. And of course, we're working with the consortium to ensure that they're doing constant literature reviews and getting the most up-to-date evidence out there possible.
It's also important to remember that there is so much we don't know about EDS. So you may be looking for an article that it doesn't exist yet because it hasn't been researched. So when it's something like that, you know, there may be some anecdotal things from doctors who have had case studies or done a webinar, and they've talked about some things that they've learned from their patients, but there hasn't been like a full study yet. And those can be kind of good placeholders until we have it. But that is why what we're doing right now is so important, is we need to get the word out. We need to spread awareness about EDS so that we can get more research funding, so that we can answer those questions, so that when you try to find those resources, you have something good to say, to show someone, because we haven't researched everything that we need to, but that's part of what we're trying to do. Who is the best person to approach to help educate hospitals and other facilities in the local area?
Are you happy to take that, Jess?
Well, I mean, one thing that we are trying to do to help educate medical professionals is a new project we have called EDS Echo. And you can help with that by referring your local medical professionals and hospitals to EDS Echo. There is a flyer on our website about that, and that Echo is a platform that will connect doctors to each other and any medical professionals to our experts for a weekly education and networking session where they can learn more about EDS from experts. They can ask any questions they have, they can discuss case studies, and even get continuing education credits. So Echo is a great place to educate medical providers and to refer people to for that. Yes, and We want to know more and do more with ECHO. And so you can help educate them by just telling them that those exist. You can also print out some information. We have printable materials, we have articles. Why not you? Why can't you be that person to go up there and help educate? There isn't really a set person, so why not you? Good luck.
I think ECHO's the best way to do this. It's why we did it. And we would definitely reach out and ask everyone. You can print leaflets on our website, get as much information as you want. And it's just growing and growing. There'll be more and more opportunity through ECHO.
What are some strategies for reaching members of a support group when the leaders have made it clear they're more interested in creating an environment without conflict than providing safe and accurate information? So I think the crux of that question is how do you try to make sure that your group is providing accurate information, and how you combat less than accurate information being?
Ask them to become an affiliate. So we have a group of support groups that are affiliates of ours. It doesn't cost any money, but the only thing that you have to sign and agree upon by becoming an affiliate is that you are using the most updated evidence-based research and information out there. And that is very, very important. We really, really want to create consistency no matter where you are, so that there's not like a German support group putting out information that's totally different to what is internationally peer reviewed and agreed. So I would encourage that support group to ensure that they're an affiliate. And for those out there seeking support groups, try and just work with the ones that are affiliates of the society if you're worried about the kind of content that they are putting out there.
Affiliates also, it looks like we've lost Shani on her connection, but Shani is the leader of the affiliates program. They have regular meetings and they have the support of Shani, wonderful resource to have. So affiliates have a lot of benefits as well, and they sometimes get a little bit more information about what we're doing through those meetings and through updates through us. So there's a lot of benefits to being an affiliate, and you get to say that you're an affiliate of the Ehlers-Danlos Society, and that's super cool. So next question we have, the connective tissue clinic in my area is giving a diagnosis of generalized connective tissue disorder instead of hypomobile EDS. They said this is to avoid patients becoming complacent about vascular symptoms that may come up in the future. How do I help raise awareness and try to combat that? And in general, if that kind of thing has happened in your area where clinics are putting out the things that you know to be inaccurate?
Well, this is a tricky one, and it may not be inaccurate. And the reason that diagnosis may have been given is because you don't meet the criteria for hypermobile EDS, but they think that there is evidence of a heritable connective tissue condition. In the absence of there being a gene that they can connect to one of the types of EDS, then some people would say you have a diagnosis of a heritable connective tissue condition. And there are some of our professionals on our consortium that would give that diagnosis. And I think what they're doing is, there's a difference between if they've individually given that one diagnosis to one person because of their individual presentation versus that's their blanket way of doing it with everyone that comes in the clinic, then that's incorrect. So it's important to understand what the difference is there. And if they're just saying we won't use hypermobile EDS, then there's a problem. But if actually they feel like this person doesn't meet the criteria for hypermobile EDS, but it may not be HSD, it may just be something that we don't know the mutation for yet, but they believe is a connective tissue condition. So it's always important to understand the thought process behind why someone is giving that diagnosis and that advice.
And do you have any tips on how to try to educate those types of clinics or doctors that are putting out there things that contradict us and the consortium?
I think the best thing that you can do is say to them, there's nothing worse than patients turning up and going, you don't know what you're talking about, here's some information, because immediately they shut down and they have no interest in what you've got to say. So instead, just be like, I'm trying to raise awareness of this condition I'm living with. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there was a recent publication. The Ehlers-Danlos Society have got some great resources on their website. So if you're interested, I'm just leaving you this information. And then it's different. It's not an attack and it's not an accusation. And already we are seeing there's definitely a different reception to EDS when it's talked about. I used to go and exhibit at conferences and people used to kind of roll their eyes when they walk past our stand or go, yeah, that doesn't exist. Now I have a queue of people that are like, I have so many patients with this. It's changing. I think people expected it to change overnight like that, but it's not. We're years away from being able to heal the 20-year gap that we had. So, but it's happened far quicker than I ever even hoped for. And there's a lot that has happened that we have to be grateful for. But I think just gently encouraging people to use the website as a resource is the best we can do.
Absolutely. I think that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending and for being interested in getting out there and spreading EDS and HSD awareness. That is so incredibly important, and it can have a huge impact on all of us as we try to deal with living with this. So thank you, everyone. Laura, do you have anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, just thank you all for tuning in. Please take on one of our My EDS or My HSD challenges this month. There's loads of tips and recommendations and ideas on our website. We really want to get this trending. I think one thing that is my constant frustration is that we're in a little bit of a hamster wheel of awareness within our own community. So it's great, it's spreading, it's fantastic, but we need to break out of our community and we need people raising awareness outside that people don't know about this. So see if we can do that this May. Let's see if we can get people understanding what this is and what we're living with. We can only do it with you. So please help us.
Yes, and there is a great thing to direct people to, which was the next thing I was going to say. Our next webinar is going to be EDS and HSD 101 with Dr. Alan Hakim. This is going to start from the very basic level. If you've never heard the word Ehlers-Danlos syndrome before, if your first question is to pronounce it or what even is it at all, this is a great place to start because he's going to start from the basic level and explain EDS, HSD, and how, and just the very basics of it. That will be coming up on May 16th. You can look for that sign up next week. Thank you all for coming and have a great, exciting, and impactful and super aware May. Thank you all.